Welcome back, everybody, to another new fantastic episode of Sit Back and Relax and Chill. And I'm gonna talk about things, and you're gonna probably listen, or you're not, and you're gonna leave. This is Bunker Codes podcast episode 2, and I try to cover things that people want to talk about. And this podcast is recorded in front of a live studio audience. Their names and personas are concealed to protect the innocent. This podcast isn't sponsored by anybody, and my book's not sponsored by anybody. And buy my book and get comfortable, because we're going to talk about the topic of the day. Don't talk to police. Wait. No, that's not the topic of today. The topic of today is, what is the difference between my very, very first publish of the Bunker Codes and the most recent publish of the Bunker Codes? So, a couple of statistics. They aren't really statistics. They're just numbers, people. The first thing is, I'm going to try to stay positive, which means I'm not going to say a bunch of negative things, even though there's tons of negative things I want to say. Like I wish Mocha would just lay down instead of crying in the background. I'm not going to say, I'm not going to shit on a bunch of stuff, even though I really want to. So we're going to go over some statistics. The original, which was published in, holy cow, Mocha, you're really making this difficult. He doesn't want to be in here when I podcast. The first iteration of this book was published on August 29th, 2022. And whether famously or infamously, a lot of people were unaware that I update my books a lot until I feel like they're right. And I do that because I can, and because I don't know how long I'm going to have, and none of us really know how long we have, and I would rather get something out than nothing. And in the future, people aren't going to understand that. But people now are going to be abundantly clear of it. That's also why my book series, PNW Affliction, was written the way it was. It was written the way it was because I was trying to get it out as fast as possible. I knew it wasn't going to make sense in the future, so I just iterated as much as I could, while Ringo clawed my elbow, because apparently the cats now want my undivided attention. So, it's been roughly 5 months, but I would say the majority of what I added, you're just going to stare right at me now, aren't you? Just going to stare right into my face. Stop it! Just go. I can't believe they're doing this. Come on. This is unbelievable. So I would say probably in the first 4 months, I added a lot of content. So what initially published at 178 pages and 57,646 words, and I want to say about 4 months, added another 100 pages and about another 21,000 words. And I tried, so it ended up being 279 pages and 88,630 words. And most of the changes were me adding context. But I thought I was doing a really good job at communicating, but I think all I managed to do was confuse and upset a lot of people who didn't understand, who were new to the series and didn't understand that I publish things as fast as I can in case I disappear, so I at least was able to do something. I think... Oh my gosh, the cats are driving me crazy. Yeah, a lot of people are used to books just suddenly being available and that just being it. However, that when you're an independent publisher, you have a lot more flexibility to just update things whenever you want. In my opinion, that is not an admission of guilt that your product was incomplete. It is because you have the ability to add more. Some people may think that they got an incomplete product, but people have been doing it with video games for ages. Now, granted, with video games, you don't have to buy the whole video game again. Some companies do that and some don't, but just rebrand and resell the game. With books, I don't have a choice. I'm not putting this on Kindle. I've already told you why. With print, I don't have a choice. And so I thought, okay, what do? Do I put the extra stuff on Gab for free? Oh, nobody reads that. Put the extra stuff on Coffee. Like one person reads it. It's just like, how many different ways do I have to like give the extra content away for free? Even though it's like additional supplemental content. Like, I've already admitted the book doesn't have everything in it. The book was never going to have everything in it. And even when I come out with the director's cut, the book's not going to have everything in it. Oh. See, unfortunately, I feel like no matter how I talk about this, it always takes like a negative tangent. I don't mean to. It's just that the book was never going to be a full product. I didn't get to talk about this in Bunker Codes, but there's really only one, and I want to say series of books, and it's essentially like an encyclopedia, and it is massive, and it is old, and it hasn't been reprinted in ages. Can't remember the name of it, but it is an entire homesteading library of every single homesteading thing you could drop. I was talking yesterday. I was talking about in podcast number 1 about how people squirreling away books on like an SD card in a Faraday bag, or people squirreling away like, libraries. The thought that my book was incomplete, I don't think is a fair assessment, because it was never going to be complete. And I wanted people's feedback anyway. It was never meant to be a complete book. It was meant to have everything I could think of. And despite my best notes and how much feedback I asked for everybody, it really took about 4 months for me to iteratively collect my thoughts. People kept buying the book, giving me more ideas, giving me more feedback. And I was reading through the book over and over and over again, getting ideas for what the book was like having to read over and over and over again. So what I finally decided to do, since nobody was reading my updates anywhere. And I kept getting the same questions over and over again. What did you change? What did you change? What did you change? I probably like feel way more attacked than is what's real, obviously. But it is something that's like really upsetting to me because there's nothing I can do about it, right? I can't go back and sit on the book for 4 more months. And I wouldn't have gotten the same... I still wouldn't have gotten any feedback, and I would still be making more changes to it now, and it wouldn't be as far... Like, I had to release it to get the feedback. And I guess I guess I just never explained to anybody that the book's gonna be getting updates, I guess. I don't know. It's a lot of the same criticisms I got for the series. Like, people would say they didn't want to buy the PNW Affliction series until the series was done. I'm like, well, that's not really fair because the series is probably never going to be done. And really what I wanted Bunker Codes to be is a complete set of all the thoughts that I had. I thought I had got most of it. And so this is just a really long explanation of saying, I kind of want to show you all what I added and why. So this isn't going to be a full, just like the last one, it's not going to be a full review of the book. I'm not going over everything. I'm going over some bullet points. And those of you in the chat can see this live, and those of you on the internet someday that are reading this after this is all a dusty wasteland of meth zombies, you'll just have to use your imagination. Or hopefully, if you're in a bunker somewhere and somebody had the foresight to record all of these and put them on an SD card and you manage to find the SD card, then congratulations. You can open up the book and read along. Doo-doo-doo-doo-doo. So, first I want to talk about the big structural changes. I thought I talked about this yesterday. I'm not sure. Hopefully most of you haven't just turned this off because of like my raging negativity. But I think it's important to explain, like, I do have feelings, and I've invested a giant chunk of my life in this, and I can't always accurately explain everything to everybody. Communication can always be better, right? I can always communicate and explain things better. And so when you're reading through this, or listening to this, and I'm reading through it, I want you to understand that most of what I added, not all, of what I added was just context. Because as people read it, they asked questions, and so I added more. You had to shut it off because of my raging negativity. Nice. Hell yeah. So I think I want you to see most of this, not all, is just context and explaining things different ways from people reading it and saying, hey, what about this? What about this? What about this? Or as I was out camping, or as I was out doing things, or as I was going through life struggles of my own, I learned more. And again, like I'll say about the original series, like, I'm not writing all of this for us now. I'm writing this for people in the future. PNW Affliction is speculative fiction that predates sci-fi as a genre. It's not for us now, it's for the future. And it's just, a lot of people just don't get that. So it's iterative now, but someday it's not going to be iterative, and those people aren't going to know anything about this. Which is why I need to rebrand PNW Affliction a little bit, but that's for another day. So as you're listening through this, I want you to think in the back of your mind, the vast majority of this is me adding context, not adding new sections. In fact, as I was going through here, I'm pretty sure I only added a handful. Almost all of this is just context. So the big move was moving the cooking section to the back. And so that'll be the most obvious, biggest change most people will notice. That was primarily because I got sick and tired of going through the cooking section every time to work on the rest of the book, and I realized that while the cooking is how this book came into being, that was the seed that got planted, was the cookbook section. It needed to get moved to the back. And if people are starving, they can just flip to the back of the book. Most people aren't going to be starving, though. And so that's the biggest thing. And I also rearranged the references section because I kept adding more things and I thought it was a good idea to organize it. So the first most interesting thing is there was a lot of feedback about building size up, and more about mice and rats. And so I added a lot more building size up stuff, and in the director's cut I'm going to be adding even more stuff about rats. Rats can ruin a bunker. Mice and rats can ruin everything. And so I added a lot more talking about how when rats are around, they pee on everything and their urine's toxic. Kind of goes along with what I was saying yesterday about if like food seems wrong. The problem is with like mice and rat urine, you can't necessarily see it, but you can definitely feel it and you can definitely smell it. And it'll make you very sick. And I forgot what the name is, but mice and rats, they don't have any bowel movements to speak of. I think sort of like birds. They just piss and shit everywhere. Everywhere. And it leaves like a little natural trail for them to follow. And if any of you have ever worked in warehouses, the problem with mice and rats is once they've started pissing and shitting all over your soda cans or whatever. All right. So, yeah. Also, I wanted to talk about like weather stripping a little bit. Weather stripping your windows. No, that's the thing. I don't think people are mad, and this isn't supposed to be like closet shade, secret shade or anything. There was a lot of misunderstandings and a lot of miscommunication, and I took a lot of things personally, and it made me upset. And I'm hoping that this clears the air with what's changed in the books. Because I feel like the perception was that I added a lot of new sections and a lot of new content, and I really didn't. I just added tons and tons and tons of context. And I didn't want to release a second book because if people bought the first book and the second book, then they'd be really confused and they'd be like, this is all you updated? And like, well, yeah, I mean, most of this is the same. And ironically, I know it's like, I thought we were going to get started. Ironically, people who had already read my books did not like it when I made minor updates and then gave them a new copy of the book. In fact, I will say unilaterally, nobody liked that at all. they wanted just their one copy and they were going to be happy with their one copy. Nobody ever asked, oh, you made another copy of this? They actually didn't like it. They wanted their one copy and they were going to consider that to be good enough. Feedback for 5 years that people didn't want updated copies. If I did new like book covers and stuff, people were really excited about new book covers. But yeah. Did I add the section about cats and dogs getting along? That is all the way at the very, 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 very end. I did add a ton of stuff about animals. I added a ton of stuff about animals. But the thing is, like, most of that's anecdotal. Like, aside for how to deal with, like, aggressive dogs, which is something that I really should have made it in at the beginning, but, like, I just couldn't remember every single topic. I mean, the amount of topics in this book is already insane. And again, you'd need like an encyclopedia, which there is only one of that I know about. There's, I think, quite a few of you have. Some of you have shoutouts in here. I can't even remember everybody I shouted out, but a lot of this stuff, like, most people know. It's just me writing things down. Like, how many people are ever gonna are like ever need to weather strip their windows properly? And that's like something that's in here, and like getting the ceiling foam, weather stripping your windows, weather stripping your doors. Is the same as like reinforcing your door frames. Like, I don't have anything about reinforcing your door frames in here, and I should probably have that. But if I add that in here, then re-release it, like, I don't know. I don't want people to feel ripped off. And so that's why I'm doing this. I don't want people to feel ripped off. And I'm hoping this clears a lot of the air. Because after this, I don't want to answer it anymore. I'm not going to. If people ask what's changed, I'm going to point to this video and hope that people don't see it as a giant negative. So, building size up, I got tons and tons and tons and tons of positive feedback about building size up. And so I massively expanded on it. It's no, like, secret information or anything, but I thought I would expand on it. A lot of radioactive considerations came out because of the UKR conflict, and so I did end up adding several radioactivity references throughout the book, and radioactivity did end up getting its own section because it didn't get one. I realized some people would want to rebuild their house with wood, and so I talked about how to harvest, like, trees properly, so by the time your bunker was about running out of food and supplies and stuff, you could harvest trees without chopping the entire forest down. I wanted to add a lot more about berry pruning in here. Realized somehow I did all the stuff about gardening and didn't actually explain how to do pruning. Again, it's one of those things, like, it's not a big deal. There's going to be a lot of people that know how to prune way better than me, but someone who's never pruned a bush before isn't going to know a lot of this stuff. Also, some bushes need to be pruned a lot more than others. Let's see here. Oh, this is a funny one. So, there's apparently people out there that think they're just going to get their phone. You know, the apocalypse happened and they're going to get their phone and they're just going to be able to do like Star Trek and scan the leaf with their iPhone or whatever. And it's going to tell them if, you know, it's okay to eat the plant or not. I think that's hilarious for a ton of reasons. People are already complaining that their phones track them all the time. Number two, most if not all of those have to connect to the internet. And they do not work. And if you think they do work, one of the funny tests I remember people doing, if you think those work, take it to the grocery store and try to scan the food. Try to scan the food at the grocery store. I remember when these first came out, that was the first thing people did, and they were like, oh, this doesn't work. Your rotary phone can't do that? I know, but your rotary phone can bludgeon anybody if they try to get in to your bunker. One of the biggest pieces of feedback I got was to add a lot more about water. And I thought I added enough about water, and then after rereading it, I realized I didn't add enough about water and purification. And so I added quite a bit about that. Again, some people are way ahead of me in water. Some people have nothing. And this book is for people that are brand new, that don't know anything. So that's why all the context, that's why me adding every little thing. This isn't for people that already know what they're doing. Semi-fully auto assault Nokia. Man, I know. In my book series, that was kind of like the idea that like the main character just has his Nokia all the way through the apocalypse and just kind of sticks it in airplane mode and just keeps using it. But he doesn't do it to scan plants. That's absolutely hilarious. Like I had to go back and put that in just because I forgot there was people that are that naive. Like, dude, if somebody's dying and you need to go find like a plant and it's gonna save them, and you got to go up on the top of the hill and fight like a kung fu panda bear, and then you like get your little phone out to like scan 3 snow blossom drop plants to make the tea that's gonna save your auntie from bugaboo fever, and you get your phone out and start scanning plants. I don't know what to tell you. Talk about water pumps. There's actually portable water pumps that don't use a lot of power, but they can't do a lot of water really fast either, but at least they're autonomous, but you don't need big power banks for the little ones. That was another thing I couldn't believe I didn't add. I was really bummed about that. So I added that. A lot more about sweat and cotton. Can't believe I didn't add a lot about that. Oh, here we go. Scanning plants totally works. You just have to do it 10 times and pick the one that came up the most often. I mean, if that's how you want to do it. That was one of the biggest reasons why I stopped using this one book reading website. Because to read my books, I had to be connected to the internet, even though the book was downloaded. And I told them, I'm like, I go camping, there's no internet. And they're like, yeah, but you're gonna come back eventually and reconnect to the internet, right? I'm like, yeah, maybe, but like, what if I don't? Or like, what if your website goes down? They're like, what do you mean? Like, is it poison ivy or is it a tomato? Is it nightshade or is it a tomato? Is it a tomato or is it a potato or is it nightshade? Or are they all three the same thing? That's actually that's later on in my potato section. Potatoes and tomatoes are both nightshade. If you let potatoes grow long enough, they start making tomatoes, but they're poisonous and they'll kill you. That actually did make it into the original copy. And I think that's the point I'm trying to make, is like, I got like 70% of the way there. This is all just little stuff, like how to make a still from, like, you know, getting some copper. And I don't really know how to do that. I just found a YouTube, or my wife actually found a YouTube video that showed how to do it. Like, oh man, yeah. There's this one guy. He said, don't have your potatoes next to your tomatoes, because they'll cross-pollinate and kill you. And it's just like, dude, you're an idiot. That's what I mean about like so much misinformation and disinformation. A little bit more about radiation. More about water filtration. Even more about water filtration and water catching. Okay. Again, like, nothing really big. Nothing really big deal. So the big to do, probably the most important thing, was the off-grid solar panel battery electrical extension cord area. It's probably the biggest update. I'm not going to go through it. I've posted it a couple places, and the for newbies, it was good enough for them to figure it out. And that's really what I was going for. But again, thanks to my friend, shout out, you know who you are. He's already posting in the comments. Helped me iron out the electrical off-grid stuff. So I am pretty proud of it. I don't think it's perfect yet. So I have a feeling in the director's cut, I'm going to be editing the electronics / extension cord / electrical math / solar panel stuff. For gas generators, I added that there's hybrids now that have gas and batteries, and the gas part does the battery part. And I think that's important because in the Pacific Northwest, the attitudes really changed. Well, in other parts of the country, the attitudes really changed too, to like not worry about solar so much and focus on either propane. Having propane run the whole house, or having gas generators to power your batteries, like during the day when it's loud enough and nobody will notice, so you can run quiet all night. Practice your light discipline. Light discipline is another spot somewhere in here that somehow I forgot about, and it ended up in here. Most people don't care about that because they live in the middle of nowhere. Other people live in subdivisions and they care a lot about light discipline, so whatever. I added a whole section in the radios about digital radios. What I will say though is there's already a learning curve when you go to just normal programmable radios. The learning curve to go to digital radios is massive. So some people are maybe interested in it, and so that's why I wrote it in there. But most people are never going to move to digital radios. It is just too much of a pain. I had a little bit of a GPS update because I was talking to a friend of mine. He's got family spread all over Hell and Gone. And we were talking about if your family's over like 40 miles away, you could kind of hit them on repeaters, or if the repeaters were on a chain, but they're going to be like really bogged up. And so if you got really high up altitude, like line of sight, 40 miles, you might be able to direct hit them if they're up really high and you have really good comms plan. But it's just really unlikely. And if it's 40 miles, which is just barely like the best you're going to get unless you're skipping your radio signal. We were talking about if you're really that worried about it, and provided, we're not all just like Neuralinked to little Elon Musk satellite dishes everywhere. Your best bet's probably going to be like sat phones, or in the near future when they have normal phones that can just hook up to the satellites instead of trying to figure out how to radio more than 40 miles. It is just going to be really unlikely because it only takes a few people to clog the radio up unless you have really good radio discipline. So I wanted to write about that a little bit. Wrote a little bit more about watches because I realized I didn't expand on it very much. I wrote a bunch more stuff about lasers because I finally found a YouTube channel that explained how and why more powerful lasers are as dangerous as they are, and why it's not worth the effort to go down the path of trying to use lasers as a weapon defensively. There's a reason why it works, and it is horrible, and it's extremely illegal, and it's extremely immoral to use lasers on people. And it's dangerous for everybody around you. And so I wanted to write a little bit about that in case anyone was thinking, I'm just going to use lasers. This isn't Star Wars. Don't play with lasers. I realized I didn't know anything about tasers. If the taser doesn't work, the taser doesn't work. And so I wrote some stuff about that. I thought I had written stuff about crypto in here, but it turns out that I guess I didn't. So I wanted to write a little bit about crypto and the parallel economy. I added a bunch of stuff about first aid. I think I had thought that I had explained like tourniquets, trauma shears, SAM splints. But I didn't. So that's in here now. Not a big deal. How to get a little bit better quality tourniquets. It's not a big deal to most people. But it's easy to get ripped off if you're buying like China copy tourniquets. I did add a pretty decently sized radiation section, and the reason why is because the main info for radiation is either in the military handbook for radiation or on the CDC's website. And the CDC, bless their hearts, has been known for modifying their own information to suit political leanings. However, at the time of me saying this right now, the CDC still has really, 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 really good radiation materials. So, like, my recommendation was to just go in there and print it all out and make sure you had it. Because there's a lot of radiation misinformation out there. I have a radiation card too, but I don't think I put it in my wallet. I think it's sitting over there. So I did try to make a legitimate effort to learn a bit more about radiation besides just use potassium iodide. And I think I also wanted to explain to not get potassium iodide confused with potassium for like bananas, and then get confused with iodine, which is what you make drinkable water with. There's also people that use iodine for other things, other health things too. It's just that actually did end up getting its own section. I talked a little bit more about epinephrine. I can't remember who I was talking to, but somebody... Oh, that's funny. You're hearing weird stuff too? That's crazy. I keep hearing weird stuff too. I don't know what's going on. Yeah, somebody in chat was talking about epinephrine and stuff, and I'm like, oh, I better have a little discussion about epinephrine. So acid and alkaline relating to battery corrosion. This is another brand new part, and it's because I was out with my friends and my ear pro had corroded and stopped working, and there's a little trick that you can do to get it working like temporarily, but it's not a good fix. And so even though I think I had already done a section of like the medical part of it, I hadn't done a section of... Oh wait, no, wait, I think I had done a section about how to not get burned by alkalines and acids, but I hadn't done a section on cleaning up electronics. And so this was a brand new section, and it occurred to me this was a really good thing to add, because if you really did find a bunker and some ding dong left their batteries in everything, then you are, and hopefully the corrosion didn't eat through the springs of the terminals, which that you can replace those too, but that's a little bit more intricate. You don't want to start a fire. It's kind of dangerous if you don't know what you're doing. So I'm like, oh, people could, conceivably really want to clean their terminals. Same thing with car batteries. I added a new section on car batteries. That's actually really dangerous. You can really F up and accidentally ground if you don't know what you're doing on car batteries. A little bit more about pepper spray, teeny bit, basically of like that there's actually way more different kinds of pepper sprays out there, delivery methods, and a little bit more about first aid. I wrote a decent sized section about infections. A lot of people deal with their infections wrong, and I have before, and if you're not careful, you can make your infections way worse instead of way better. A lot of different people have different medical opinions of how to deal with infections, but I wanted to add some things in there about how to like not make it worse. Then a little bit more about rabies. And then I added some stuff about skunks in here, but that's all the way at the end. A little bit about laying on wool blankets the right way. And we're back. Hello. What have you included a slingshot with your book for those pesky balloons? That's funny that you bring that up. I was originally going to have a slingshot section, and I had a slingshot as a kid, just like most reasonable people did. And unfortunately, like, they just don't make really good slingshots anymore. Those, like, quote unquote survival slingshots, they're garbage. Like, you'd really, I don't know, like, surgical tubing just doesn't last. So, I don't know. I don't know how you would make. You certainly can't buy one, but I don't know how you'd make a slingshot that would last. Like, the rubber, the surgical tubing, whatever, it just disintegrates. So I thought about that and I'm like, that doesn't make. Yeah, I don't know. Don't know, but it's an interesting thought. If you could somehow find a way to preserve, yeah, exactly. Modern rifle. I mean, I think probably like a high powered air rifle is probably as close of a modern slingshot. But the thing is that I think you can get a slingshot going faster than you can get a modern air rifle. It's just that oh gosh, like ball bearings, a ball bearings in a slingshot is just brutal. And there were things like that, like in the riots, where people would have like slingshots and ball bearings, and I think I would rather get hit with an air rifle than a slingshot and ball bearings. Just, man, oh man, just brutal. Anyway, would be good for small game that you don't want to, obliterate with a 223 5.56 round. But again, if you don't have an air rifle, but you have a 22, just use your 22. And you can carry 10 million rounds of 22 around. It doesn't weigh very much, and you don't have to mess with CO2 or pumping. There is a huge rifle, pistol, shotgun section. Nothing about air rifles. Not that air rifles are bad. Just that, like, they're just not good. They're clumsy, they're clunky, they're slow, they're going in on like yesterday's conversation, like an air rifle is like a really, 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 really specialized thing. It can do one thing really well, and that's about it. It's like airsoft. It can do like one thing, and then it's useless for everything else. That's why I'm not going to spend money on airsoft. That's why I'm not going to spend money on an air rifle. They're only good for one thing. I don't have the time or the energy, massively burnt out, so not going to deal with it. Slingshots, though, man, if there was a way to preserve rubber to where it would work for a long time, that would be cool. But I think that's why in ye old modern days, the slings were some leather, and they would in a cup, and they would swing it around and kerbop things, which that would last forever if you could make and use an actual sling, or make a bow and arrow, which I sort of loosely know how to do. But like Survival Lily has a great video for making a bows and arrows. If you could make a decent bow and arrow, or make a spear or something, like, man, you're gonna be like light years ahead of everybody else if it's a hunter-gathering scenario. In my books, My book just doesn't go like that hardcore into that much like off grid, you know. If you find a bow and arrow in your bunker, then like go knock yourself out. But I didn't want to just basically I would just be like stealing other people's info because I've never built one. I love bow and arrows. I used to shoot them all the time. They hurt my finger. I love bow and arrow though. I'm just not going to try to tell people how to build one. If somebody has that much time on their hands, they can figure out how to build it themselves. They don't need my help. And again, it's one of those things where, like, hopefully there's other books in the bunker, and hopefully there's another book or video they downloaded or something that has to do that. So, I realized I hadn't added anything about, like, flossing. I thought I had, you know, more stuff about brushing and flossing in here, but I wanted to be a little bit more clear. I've also heard somebody call these, like, food traps, you know, in your teeth. Like, if food gets stuck between your teeth, you don't know it, and like that's what eats away your teeth really bad. And it used to really frustrate me because dentists would like push flossing, and all the flossing was doing, I'm not a dentist, this isn't dental advice, but the floss was pushing the food that was stuck in my teeth even further down. I ended up losing 1, 2, 3, 4. Lost 4 teeth. Until they came out with those handy dandy like green things at Costco. They can just push it all out, and my teeth have been fine ever since. The kids these days have no idea how good they've got it with taking care of their teeth. So I used to have just like a lot of pain and stuff, and it's because the stupid floss was just pushing the food further and further down. It just ruined my teeth. That and a lot of soda. But later on in life, after I got all my teeth fixed, from the soda, getting the food stuck between them was the worst. I want to put a little section about that in there. There's a new big cold and flu section. And I think I wrote this in part, not because any of you don't know, you know, your own ways of treating colds and flus, but if you're in a bunker and you see a bunch of medicine and you don't know what any of it does, and all you see is like the long medical names of it, and you don't know the difference between guaifenesin and dextromorphin and fexofenadine. In fact, fexofenadine or like Allegra or whatever, that actually, that one actually comes up a lot because there's a lot of people with seasonal allergies. And I heard that Allegra doesn't actually last that long, shelf stable wise. But if you know what Allegra is, but you don't know what like fexofenadine is, or just like antihistamines in general, like, it seemed like a really good idea to just write all that down. Because again, that's like a common thing. And there's just so many brand names for it that you don't, if you don't know, like, oh shoot, I need phenylephrine. But what's the difference between phenylephrine and pseudoephedrine, since on the box they both are called the same thing, but they're two completely different things. Drink a lot of water. Got a lot of funny stories. There's a lot of people that don't know when you take a bunch of Sudafed, you have to drink a bunch of water with it. It will not work. You will just get dehydrated and you'll be miserable. A lot of people don't know that. Well, this is like just anecdotal stuff. It is a huge section though. And then I wanted to write stuff about viruses and antibodies. I'm trying to remember why. I think I wanted to write this because of like the mutations from the certain virus of unknown origins. And I was trying to like imagine in the future how many times it would mutate. Although a lot of people still don't believe it's real, but whatever. It's obviously real. It's just it's mutated 17 million times. We all know whose fault that really is, but it gets blamed on us anyway. So I wanted to write a bit about virus mutations and a bit about antibodies. I really went on a big rant here. I'm surprised I wrote all this down. I think I'm like, if anything is going to get me banned, or a bunch of like virologists to tell me how wrong I am, I think it was writing this virus and antibody section. I think in the extended cut, I have a feeling I'm going to write even more. I like this part. Well, this is obviously horrible because devising a cure in time is practically impossible. It works itself out soon enough. Then you burn the bodies, sing Ring Around the Rosy Morn, and try to rebuild. I was like, oh man, I must have really been on one when I wrote this part. Talks about like the dangers of abusing antibiotics. I wrote a bunch about antibodies in here too. Man, I was really on one. I think this all comes from writing my religious exemptions podcast and all the research I did. Little teeny tiny bit about vitamins and nutrition. A bit about potassium because muscle cramps suck. There's some about hydration and hydration tablets and salt tablets in here. Electrolytes, potassium, all that's like really important, especially as your diet goes downhill. Which is why I have this part about vitamins. Iron's super important. A bit about antioxidants, even though I already have a lot about antioxidants in here. Regarding losing people, I didn't add anything to that, but I am going to be adding to that later. From like a religious point of view. And again, if people don't like the religious stuff, then they can go fly a kite. I added a bunch about cleaning firearms because I realized, like, in all of my firearm safety stuff, I think I forgot to remind people that most accidents happen when people are cleaning their firearms, and also that every firearm breaks down differently. And again, hopefully if there's a bunch of firearms in the bunker and you don't know what to do with them, hopefully they left the manuals, because every single pistol breaks down just a little different. And I was actually like, with the takedown lever, like sometimes you need to pull the trigger, sometimes you don't. And sometimes that takedown lever, I was watching this video on just the other day, like they can disengage and you could be like really confused if you don't realize that the takedown lever disengaged. So anyway, a lot of firearms, since you have to pull the trigger to remove the slide and they don't clear the pistol first, that's usually one of the first times they get an ND, because they're freaking idiots. There's no excuse to ever have an ND, period. So if I was going to cover like how to disassemble pistols, that book would be like 500 pages because there's just a million ways to do it. So hopefully there's manuals in there. But it's just kind of like basic safety. I don't think I have a huge section in here about if you're going to do dry fire practice, have the ammo separate and have your brain cognizantly separate. I bring it up a little bit in the breakdown and cleaning. A little bit more about 12 gauge ammo. A little bit about press checks. It's funny, there's a lot of people who are like, you don't need to do a press check if your pistol's always loaded. You know what's funny is like your pistol could be just like slightly out of battery. Just slightly out of battery, and if you don't, do a press check, check the slide every once in a while. It hasn't happened to me in ages, but it used to happen to me where like I'd realize the pistol was just a hair out of battery. And I want to say maybe it happened on my last pistol. Maybe the spring wasn't as heavy. I'm not sure, but it did used to happen to me. I think it was because I would like bonk the pistol slide on the holster and it would knock it out of battery. It's kind of one of like the potential possible self-defense things to... Not every pistol can get knocked out of battery like that though, but I have seen YouTube videos where people swear up and down that that's viable. And on some pistols it absolutely is. But there's no way you could know from looking at the pistol at night, if someone's got a gun to you, if you can smack it out of battery or not. Anyway, that didn't make it into the book, but some of the other stuff about cleaning it did. Oh, I talk about drop safety in here. I added that. I also added what cocked and locked meant for 1911s. Although, really any pistol with safety. Although I guess it could only be cocked and locked if it has like a hammer. But there's pistols with pins. You can have a round in the chamber and have the safety on. I really should add some more carry mindset in here. Start by carrying it unloaded and start by carrying it loaded with the safety on until you get used to it. Some people start with carrying no mag in it at all. Eventually you don't even realize you're wearing it. I should put more of that in here. Yeah, a little bit about weapon retention. It floors me how expensive holsters with the built-in weapon retention are. I want to talk about the break-in period of pistols. I got into this with somebody the other day. I've never had to break in a pistol. I can't remember who it was. Oh, there I go being negative again. Actually, it was probably somebody that listens to this. I'm not trying to be negative. If you didn't have to break it in, that just means that they broke it in for you. And when I got my new pistol, I noticed that the feed ramp already had scratches up the feed ramp. So I bet you I won't have to break in the pistol that I bought. Even though it was brand new, it already had wear on the feed ramp. So they were running rounds through it. So pistols absolutely do have a break-in period. Just sometimes they do it at the factory and sometimes they don't. So always put 50 rounds through, just in case. Do I have anything in here about limp wristing? I should really be taking better notes. Fuck. I haven't been taking notes this whole time. I don't think I have anything about limp wristing in here. I better take some notes. Is anyone still there? Am I talking to myself? It doesn't matter. I'm about 2/3 of the way done. We are back. Yeah. Oh yeah, you're right. I didn't even realize that. You're 100% right. Okay, we're back. I took my 20-minute break. And so this next part, boo-boo kits for ARs. I don't know how come I never I don't. A lot of this stuff I don't know how or why. I don't know how or why it didn't make it in, but it's really important to have spare parts for your ARs. And there's a lot of people now that are saying, instead of buying a second AR, or I mean, you need to have one for every person in your family that's a fighting age or will be. But instead of buying just tons and tons and tons of ARs, just buy a lot of parts for the ones you have. And that's actually a really good idea. There's a couple of really, really annoying small things, like Ringo, that can go bad on your AR. Or you can just lose it because the spring can just go flying away. So, yeah, for some reason I wrote a bunch more stuff about mags. Nothing really crazy though. Oh, ow. That was, you really clawed me there, buddy. You're being really demanding. So I have the carry mindset here. Quite a bit of updates. And stuff about reloads. Oh, a lot of this was like inspecting your ammo, because I thought if you get a bunker, yeah, I know, manual loaders are great. They can be finicky at first, but sometimes it's because like the springs of the mags are like really new. I really should. Hold on. I'm gonna take another note. Crap, I keep closing my notes. One other important thing about mags is you don't always want to fill your mags up, and I know most people say, "Hey, wear the spring out." There's been people that have done plenty of tests. They've left 30 rounds in mags forever, and the mags are fine. That's just another fake, stupid internet, fake, stupid thing. There are some important things about mags you should know. If it's a 30-round mag, sometimes you actually can get 31 rounds in it. And that's bad, because you will jam. Among other things. You probably will ruin the spring. And you'll jam your rifle. That happened to me my very, 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 very first time, and then I didn't slingshot it all the way either. Man, if you've never fired a modern rifle before, you need to have somebody with you that actually knows what they're doing. I figured it out though. It was fine. I was really super nervous though. Yeah, you can't have too many mags. I didn't want this to be like all encompassing, but while we're at it, I don't know if it says it in here, but if you think a couple thousand rounds of ammo is a lot, that's like one day at the range. And it's the same thing with mags, and it's the same thing with safes. If you're buying a ton of guns, you need to stop buying guns at some point and buy a damn safe. If you're buying a lot of guns and you don't have any ammo, you need to stop buying guns and start buying ammo for them. If you keep buying ammo for them and you don't have any mags, you need to stop buying ammo and buy mags. A lot of people screw this up and they just keep buying stupid guns over and over and over and over and over. Every gun, unless it's like, what do they call those, like range toys or, the wall hangers. If you're buying an actual like serviceable pistol or rifle, you need to have a lot of ammo for it, and you need to have a lot of mags for it. Mags don't last forever. You lose them, you drop them. People shoot them. Like, they break, you step on them, they fall in the mud, you lose them, they wash downstream. Like, you need a lot of mags. Yes, they're expensive as shit for like some of the more expensive pistols, but you need to look at that before you buy a pistol. You need to look at the price of the mags. If you can buy a pistol and you can't afford the mags, you need to rethink things. Or like 5.7s, FN like 5.7s, like there's like some spin-offs of some 5.7s that are like really affordable. So okay, so great, you can afford the pistol and you can afford the mags now, but you still can't afford the ammo because you can't afford a 5.7 ammo. So of course, if you're finding all of this in a bunker, then some other person already figured it all out. But you know, bunker talk aside, podcasty topic. That's a good podcasty topic for someday. Not really a bunker topic because you're gonna get whatever's in the damn bunker. Although I guess if you had to run away from the bunker and could only pick up one thing, pick up the most reliable pistol that has the most mags and the most ammo, or rifle. I talked about more blade safety and awareness because you don't want to get cut. There's a lot of safety stuff in here. Pliers and multi-tool stuff. I heard some people throwing the term super steel around, which is kind of an interesting like marketing gimmick, but not in a negative way. But if anyone ever saw the term super steel, I really don't want them to think that like there actually is some magic steel out there exists. There are some really good steels. You just have to know metal steel. Some blade cleaning, some blade sharpening, nothing too crazy. Offensively, pepper spray. This is a new area, a brand new area. I couldn't believe that I wrote all the defensive pepper spray stuff and none of the offensive pepper spray stuff. I don't mean defensive, I mean first aid. First aid pepper spray, but I didn't do defensive pepper spray. Bee suits. That's a brand new area. I wrote about bee suits. That doesn't apply to most of you, but maybe somebody it would. Zippo lighter. So this is a funny thing is I thought that I had written a part about Zippo lighters in here, but I forgot how to actually use them. More stuff about taking care of your tents. Tons and tons of cold camping info, which the cold camping area was already huge. Excuse me, but I wrote even more about it. Tons and tons and tons and tons of stuff about cold camping. But again, if you're living in California, and you're always going to be, or Florida, although it can get cold in Florida, you know, if you're living close to the equator, Texas, you know, whatever, like, it can get cold there, but, like, you're probably going to be fine. The rest of us, though, like, it was getting in the teens here a couple weeks ago, like, you really got to know your shit if you're going to survive, and so I wrote a lot more about cold weather camping. A lot more. I wrote some stuff about Faraday boxes. Oh, and light pollution. Yep, there's the area about light pollution that I wrote. In fact, I think you know who you are in the chat. I think this light pollution discussion might have came from me and you talking about it. Can't remember. And that's really why I want to emphasize, like, I don't regret getting the book out early because I needed to get everybody's opinion on it if I was going to get the book to be perfect. Or at least as perfect as I could get it. And I think maybe I just didn't do a good enough job at explaining it. So recon scouting. I don't know why I added this in there. I think it's because we were talking about like what patrolling around the bunker it would look like if you needed to. And the fact that people won't have night vision, but they still need to be able to get around at night. More stuff about hoarding, but hoarding in the good way. Things that are handy to have tons of. I think somewhere in here I wrote about bleach powder too, but I don't remember. And a huge update, just massive update to the pets area. I don't know, a lot of this I should have added. A lot of the dog stuff I should have added, and I completely forgot. Here's the pig stuff. Parrots, frogs, turtles. Horses, emus, goats, skunks and squirrels. I should add minks. People keep minks as pets too. Minks and ferrets. Ah, I closed my notes again. Minks and ferrets. Oops, those are the wrong notes. 99 Luftballons. Minks. Ferrets. I knew somebody with ferrets. Like, I didn't get it. I don't get ferrets at all, but I get minks. Skunks. Yeah, a bunch of more like false information about how to get rid of skunky stuff. Spiders. I added a giant spider section. And that is another thing that should have made it into the original and didn't. I just plain forgot. Bears. I wasn't going to add anything in here about bears, but I ended up having a bear situation. Or it could have been Bigfoot. I don't know. Some people are telling me that it couldn't have been a bear because bears don't do what that bear was doing. And that what that bear was doing was more like what Bigfoot does. But it was close enough to where it sounded like it was right next to me and I was looking right at where it was growling and I couldn't see it. So neighbor said it was a bear. So that's what I'm going with. Oh, and I have black bears, brown bears. I don't think I go over. Yeah. Grizzly bears, stay away from them. Brown bears, stay away from them. And if you run into polar bears, you're an idiot. And if you run into panda bears, you're also an idiot. I don't know what to tell you. Also, somewhere in here, like, there was like a myth that like bear spray was like stronger than normal pepper spray, but that's not true. And I used to even think that bear spray was stronger than pepper spray, but it's not. Me and some buddies got into like a really interesting argument about that, and I don't really like how some of the argument necessarily went, but it forced me to look up a bunch of things and realize I was wrong about a bunch of things. Bear spray works, but it is a marketing gimmick as to the strength of it versus commercially available defensive sprays. Somewhere in here too, in fact, I think it's back up at the pepper spray section. Yeah. Huh. I thought for sure I added. Let me see. Wasps have. I added a huge section about bee suits. And let me see. I'm looking for if I wrote anything, another stupid ass urban legend about using wasp spray as a defense. Shoot, it didn't make it in here. That's weird. I swear I put that in here. Write that note down. Positive I did that, so I'll have to look for that and figure out what happened. 99 bee Luft balloons. Spiders, bears. You snuck up on me, you little sneaky sneak. You little sneaky sneak. Yeah, where? Meow wow. Meow wow. Thought I had like a bugs area. Huh. More latrine stuff. In fact, this was one of the very first pieces of feedback I got from one of my biggest supporters and helpers with this. Said you didn't have anything in your book about bidets, and so we got in. I want to say like a good half an hour long discussion about, do you really want to use your drinking water, potentially drinking water? You know, is that really like more important or less important? And kind of going back and forth, and then started getting into like gray water. That ended up being like a really good discussion, and I thought it was like too advanced to go in here, but then I'm like, I'm making updates, it's gonna go in. Now to a lot of people that won't matter, but I think it's still a discussion worth having. Plasma lighters. A lot of mindset stuff and reacting to the situation as fast as possible, situational awareness. A lot of mindset. A lot of mindset. That was a new area. My religious literature area was a brand new area, which segued into me reading about half of the Lucifer Effect, which is the Stanford Prison Experiment. Extremely hard book to read, but I think if there was one thing to take away from the bunker codes, is that you really actually probably just need to go read the Stanford Experiment. And then figure out what you're going to do. Talking about fake Christianity, lactose intolerance, just some kind of random reminders about rehydrating. Honey, don't eat pepper balls because they're hot. Don't chop down your apple trees. How to maintain your apples a little bit longer. Hey, buddy. Don't burn charcoal briquettes in your house. A bit about propane refilling. My friend was telling me propane has to go up. Shoot, did I close my notes again? Man, this is getting annoying. Keep closing my notes. You said propane can up. Propane can up. So gas can escape. That's what I think he said. Yeah, I closed it again. Oh, I hate. Oh, it's so frustrating. Oh well. I explained first, second, and third degree burns, which is weird because I swear that I had explained that, but went through lithium fires again. I thought I went through all this, but I think I wanted to go through it even more. Have a fire plan. Don't keep your vehicle idle in a grassy field. Don't use soap on your cast iron skillet, aka Dutch oven. Bunch of cooking safety. Come on. Bunch of cooking safety stuff. And I hadn't really played around with induction burners a lot, but we had a situation where we had a problem with stoves and ordering new stoves, and every single stove we ordered, and by we I mean the roommates, every single stove was bad and broken. Every single one was broken. They ordered like 3 or 4 until they finally got a stove that wasn't broken. So we had the induction burner, and those are interesting if you've never used one. They look like a normal burner, but if you don't know that they're an induction burner, you're not going to know how to use it. A little bit more food saver stuff. Some more canning and jarring stuff. A bit more about like charging your freezer. Meow. A little bit more about portion control, which I still need to learn this too, because there's a spot in here about like not using too much butter or milk in your macaroni and cheese, and I literally did that like 2 days ago. And I'm like, oh crap, and I pulled some of the butter out because I was just gonna go to waste. And then a bunch of final thoughts on food and carbs and stuff, and a lot of that was from the feedback that like a lot of these recipes have a lot of carbs, and it's like, well, yeah, well, when the shit hits the fan, you're going to be eating a lot of carbs. But you're going to be burning through that energy like crazy. And that's it. So that seems like a lot of stuff that you may have missed out on. But I think everything but about 5 topics in there is all just kind of anecdotal and contextual stuff that I was adding. And feedback from everybody that I wouldn't have got unless I had tried to get feedback, and publishing the book was the only way I knew how. I just wish I had done a better job at explaining it. And I know maybe nobody really is mad at me, but unfortunately I had just a lot of people, say like, what's changing? Oh, you're changing it? And I felt really bad. Like I had failed everybody in explaining that, like, I really do stand by that everybody that ordered early copies got a really good product. And so if those new sections sound really good, I hope you'll consider ordering another one, or waiting for the hardbound, where all of that and even more is going to be in there. I think it's worth it. It's like 30% more content, but like you see, like most of it's just anecdotal context, me just explaining things more, and some of it was me remembering stuff, and some of it's just from all the great feedback I got. I'd say probably half of it was from feedback, and then half of it was just me remembering things, and a couple things were me running into brand new things like the induction burner thing. So anyway, I appreciate y'all, and that's the end of this one, and I hope there wasn't I hope that that this was all taken in the best possible and nobody takes it personally and there's no secret shade meant. No. If you like this one, let me know and I'll make more about specific parts, because this was just to kind of gloss over it all. And this didn't cover stuff that I hadn't updated. Those are just the updates. So talk to you all later. Bye.